Hurricane Erin has become the first hurricane of the 2025 Atlantic season, and it's just getting started. It's expected to rapidly intensify into a powerful major hurricane this weekend, tracking north of the Caribbean as it does. I'm about to break down the brand new intensity forecast, potential impacts, and the latest model guidance, which is now showing a clearer picture of Erin's path. Before we dive in, a huge thank you to everyone who helped us pass 1,000 subscribers. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next tropical weather update. So here's a current look at Hurricane Erin. It's getting organized very quickly and beginning to intensify. Current winds are up to 85 miles an hour, and the minimum pressure has decreased to 982 millibars. Based on the latest information the recon aircraft found from Erin, and tonight this is expected to be at 85 miles an hour on the cone. That's what it's showing, but it will actually be intensifying at a faster rate than previously forecast. Going into Saturday, it's going to be at 105 miles an hour, but then by Saturday night, it could happen even a little bit sooner than Saturday night, potentially the afternoon, depending on how fast this rapidly intensifies. We could be looking at a 120 mile an hour Category 3 major hurricane, the first one of the 2025 hurricane season, looking at that out just north of the Caribbean. So it's going to be at a safe distance away from the Caribbean, that it's not going to be causing too much impacts. The outer bands will be producing heavy rain across the northeastern Caribbean, including Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Lesser Antilles. They're going to be seeing heavy rainfall, potential flooding concerns, and also tropical storm force wind gusts. But then it's going to pull north, and some of this rapid intensification could actually be a good thing that allows the storm to actually move a bit faster to the north. That could keep it away from the Caribbean and actually allow it to turn and avoid the Bahamas. But then we're going to have to watch Bermuda to see how close it gets. But it is going to intensify pretty quickly. We have Sunday, a Category 4 with winds of 130 miles an hour. Then it goes all the way up to 140 miles an hour. We could see our peak intensity around Monday, with winds expected to be 145 miles an hour. So this is a very powerful hurricane. This is going to be a Category 4 out there in the Atlantic. And then the winds do start coming down as we go towards the middle of next week, as it moves potentially between North Carolina and Bermuda. The current cone keeps it about halfway between North Carolina and Bermuda, slightly closer to Bermuda though. But it shows the maximum winds coming down going into Tuesday and Wednesday, but the wind field is going to expand by quite a bit. And so that's going to be something to watch, especially for Bermuda, but also the outer banks of North Carolina are going to have to be watching that. But the main focus is going to be on heavy rainfall across the northern Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, with the potential for flooding as those outer bands bring in that heavy rainfall across those islands. And then tropical storm force wind gusts are possible across those same areas in the outer rain bands of Hurricane Erin. It's not going to be a direct hit. Then as it starts turning west and north, the risk of direct impacts for the Bahamas is actually going down. Fortunately, the track has shifted slightly to the east. Yesterday, there were models that were taking it pretty close to the Bahamas and the East Coast. Fortunately, the models have shifted a little bit further east, and they are consolidating on a track that's between North Carolina and Bermuda and not directly hitting either. So that is a good thing. The risk of direct impacts is decreasing, but there's going to be a risk of big waves, dangerous surf, and rip currents along the east coast of the U.S. going into next week. Also, Bermuda is going to have to watch this depending on how close it gets. The wind field is going to be expanding quite significantly, and so we're going to have to be watching for wind impacts, also heavy rain, and of course, the high surf and rip current risk there as well. Now, in terms of the impacts to the Caribbean, we're looking at about 2 to 4 inches of rain across the Leeward Islands, the Virgin Islands, and also Puerto Rico. Pretty much 2 to 4 inches of rain with localized accumulations up to 4 to 6 inches perhaps. And so that could bring somewhat of a risk for flooding, but nothing too extreme with impacts expected in the Caribbean. But the hurricane is going to be intensifying rapidly. It's expected to become a Category 2 within the next few hours, and then a major hurricane in 24 hours or less. Going into Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, we could be looking at major Hurricane Erin. Then a Category 4 very shortly after that, as soon as 36 to 48 hours. A Category 4, that peak intensity occurring around 72 hours, and then after that, the intensity does start coming down. It is going over very warm sea surface temperatures, but that shear, the wind shear, is pretty light right now, but it will be increasing as we go into the early to middle part of next week. So that's going to start diminishing the intensity, but the wind field is going to be expanding. So it's going to be a bigger storm. Even if the maximum sustained winds are weaker, a bigger wind field will expand the impacts out further from the center. So here's what the HAFS A model has. This is the latest run of the HAFS A model is showing. Tonight, we're looking at a Category 1 hurricane, winds of around 75 to 80 miles an hour. So it's actually a bit more intense than what the HAFS A model is showing here. So keep that in mind. It does increase to 90 miles an hour going into tomorrow morning, Saturday afternoon, and then Saturday night, we're looking at a major hurricane, winds of around 115 to 120 miles an hour. And it continues intensifying up to a Category 4 hurricane Saturday night going into Sunday. We're looking at 125 to even 140 miles an hour east of the Turks and Caicos Islands. Then, going into Monday, we have a Category 4 hurricane with winds of 145 miles an hour, still moving east of the Bahamas. It looks like the HAFS A model has shifted back towards some of the other guidance. Yesterday, the hurricane guidance was taking it further west, which was a very concerning thing. Now, it's shifting a little bit to the east, so it's not expected to impact the Turks and Caicos or the Bahamas significantly, except for the high surf and rip current concerns. It does continue intensifying, though. So we're having this big hurricane out there in the southwestern Atlantic, still a Category 4 all the way into Monday night, into Tuesday. Then it starts to weaken down, so we could be back down to a low-end Category 3 hurricane according to the HAFS A model. And this is definitely possible, especially as it expands. Those maximum winds are going to come down with eyewall replacement cycles happening. You have the increasing shear. That will bring down the maximum winds, but the wind field is going to be a lot bigger. As you notice, this is a 943 millibar Category 2 hurricane on Tuesday night. That's huge. The wind field has definitely expanded quite a bit, and it could regain intensity too. Going into Wednesday, showing some re-intensification going on as a much bigger system. So that's the latest intensity forecast for Hurricane Erin. Now the track guidance. This is the big thing. It's going north of the Caribbean. Then it's going to turn, and it could potentially bring some tropical storm force wind gusts to the Turks and Caicos Islands. That's pretty much about it. Some tropical storm force wind gusts, maybe some rain on the very outside of the storm system, depending on how fast it's able to expand. But then, notice the modeling is taking it basically halfway between North Carolina and Bermuda, but a little bit closer to Bermuda. So they still have to watch. Like, if it were to go directly in between, that would be the best case scenario where it doesn't cause significant impacts for anybody, really. But this is in about 5 days. The track guidance is narrowing in on this type of a track. So confidence is increasing on that. That's a good thing. But Bermuda should be monitoring this system as the track guidance can still shift around. And also the East Coast, not the entire East Coast, but really the North Carolina coast. If this goes a little bit further west, especially with that big wind field, they could be looking at perhaps tropical storm force wind gusts if the guidance shifts west again. But we're not talking about a landfall. It's not hitting Florida. It's not hitting the Bahamas. It's not going to make landfall on the east coast of the U.S. That's not going to happen. We're looking at how close is it going to get? Is it going to shift west enough that it causes some level of impacts? So that's the big thing with the track guidance as we go over the next several days with Hurricane Erin. Now, the rip current risk is very high across the northeastern Caribbean this weekend because of Hurricane Erin. So even though it's not directly causing impacts in terms of a landfall or anything like that, We're looking at a high risk of rip currents on the north side of Puerto Rico, moderate risk of rip currents on the south side of Puerto Rico, and then for the Virgin Islands, also a high risk of rip currents, and that would probably extend over to the Leeward Islands as well, Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bartholomew, Barbuda, the islands closest to Hurricane Erin. Yeah, and that's the thing, that even though this isn't going to make landfall on the east coast of the U.S. from the current model guidance, the wind field is going to generate high waves, high surf, and a very high risk of rip currents along the east coast, along the coast in the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And so here's the significant wave height forecast going into this weekend. We have those high waves potentially around 10 feet. And then as this goes through on Monday, we can see 10 to 15 foot wave heights. And this is the significant wave height. Individual waves could be higher than this. Just keep that in mind. But we're looking at 10 to 15 feet across the Turks and Caicos Islands, and then around 10 to 15 feet for the eastern facing Bahamas. And then notice these very big waves moving up the coast towards North Carolina. We can see waves, the significant wave height of around 20 feet, maybe even a little higher than that, depending on how close it gets with the wind field. We're looking at 20 feet, a 20-foot significant wave height happening there. And Bermuda also could get in on that, seeing wave heights that are similar, 15 to 20 feet, maybe a little higher in some places. And then that will actually go up the east coast a little bit with significant waves up to 10 to 15 feet along the mid-Atlantic coast, probably all the way up to New Jersey, potentially Long Island, but the Northeast is seeing less wave activity than the Outer Banks of North Carolina. That's the location that should be watching the wave action the most going into the middle of next week. Now, the reason why there's some uncertainty in the track and in how far west Hurricane Erin is going to go is because we have this. Here's the GFS model showing this ridge of high pressure over the Atlantic right here is kind of what's controlling this, as well as some troughing back here of the northeastern U.S. and southern Canada that we're going to have to watch. So as Hurricane Erin gets pulled north, we have this area of high pressure is retreating, weakening down. That's allowing Hurricane Erin to move to the north. And then notice what happens. There's this trough right here over the northeastern U.S., southern Canada, that begins pulling this storm, but then it's going to actually push it out before it reaches the northeast or southern Canada. That keeps it out away from impacting any land, but it goes in between North Carolina and Bermuda in this run of the GFS. But then the ridge actually builds back in, and we're looking at potentially other tropical systems down the road after Hurricane Erin as we go towards the late August. And so that's also something to keep an eye on. The AI Euro model is showing a different scenario. It's showing a much stronger high-pressure ridge that's going to push Hurricane Erin a bit further west. It's still not hitting the Bahamas or anything like that, but getting uncomfortably close to the Bahamas and the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And with a huge wind field, that's going to be something to watch. So depending on how strong that ridge stays, if it really weakens down, then Hurricane Erin is going to get pulled a little bit further east. But if it stays stronger, it's going to actually push it a little bit further west. Not so far west that it makes landfall in North Carolina. We're not anticipating that as of right now. We're pretty confident that it is going to stay offshore. It's not going to make landfall in the U.S. or pretty much anywhere else. But we're just watching the track to see how close it gets, because with a very powerful hurricane and a large wind field, those impacts can extend pretty far out from the center. So that's pretty much what's happening with Hurricane Erin. That's the latest update on what's happening in the tropics. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit the like button if you haven't already, share the video, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates on the tropics. Thanks for watching. Extreme Weather Zone out.